Welcome to the Big Biz Show. Taking care of business. You want fast-talking, hard-hitting discussions on business and finance? Maybe with a barroom slant and some really salty peanuts? We're not counting calories. We're counting cash. Before we get to the man with the financial plan, meet the money team. Costa, Mary, and Greg. Now Captain Finance himself, Sully.
From the Loft 100 studios here in Southern California, wherever you're watching, wherever you're listening, thanks for being along for the ride. As we say in these parts, a big old howdy to ya. Here as we celebrate the crash, the anniversary of the Hindenburg crashing.
That's right.
Speaking of dirigibles, I'm Costa. That's Mary Rick Godwin. Our executive producer, Greg Tardio, and of course, Sully.
Did you say dirigible?
What's this
Dirigible.
going on today?
That's a Zeppelin. Dirigible, Zeppelin, all 9 yards.
I thought a dirigible was like a hamster.
No, that's a gerbil.
Gerbil, thanks, appreciate it.
Walked right into it.
You did, you walked right into it, didn't you? How many people passed on the Hindenburg? And do you remember where it was?
Lakehurst, New Jersey.
New Jersey, exactly. How many people died?
I want to say 37.
About 36.
Bunch of people on the ground.
Yes, and there was a very famous radio broadcast. Humanity.
The Humanity.
Never all Humanity? Have you? Yeah.
No.
Yeah, the guy broke down on. I mean, he's
awful.
the worst thing he'd ever witnessed, which probably was.
Oh yeah.
It was criticized later when he said the worst thing ever happened.
Oh.
What year was this?
39, I believe.
Yeah.
Do they know what started it?
Static
Hydrogen.
electricity. Yeah, well, hydrogen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Static electricity. For the longest time, the Germans tried to say, "Oh, it was sabotaged by the Americans because it had the swastika on the fins and stuff." But after the guy who built it,
Which, by the way, was the worst thing that happened.
yeah,
Not the
exactly,
not the Hindenburg.
right.
Which was the
Static electricity in the catwalk, because it doesn't really explode. It just kind of catches fire and then just gone.
Wow. Market's been up the last 9 days in a row, having a bit of a hit. But Howie Font, our lead analyst from New York, joins us here, live as he does every single day. Howard Font, how are you, sir? Great to see you today. And what's going on? So all the panic we had in the markets a couple weeks ago evaporated the last week and a half. You know, as the world's coming to an end. And you know, of course, listen, I don't want to sound like Donald Trump, but as I predicted, this whole thing was a Cold War. Mm-hmm. Oh, look who's no longer in charge of DOGE.
Yeah.
Imagine that. Elon Musk is gone now. This is what Donald Trump does. He gets everybody all riled up. He goes the exact opposite direction. He goes, hey guys, look at this. Hey, look at this. Bink. That's exactly what he does. It's called a rope-a-dope.
Let me jump in on a couple points here. So yes, it's true. We are back to where we were. Basically, we're a little bit down the last 2 days, but we had a 9-day in a row rally, which does not happen for the S&P 500. So we've had 2 down days, but we're basically back where we were before Liberation Day. That's true. We're in the middle of the 60-day pause. We've got 2 months left until tariffs really kick into effect. Elon Musk,
which they never will take into effect ever. This is the same thing.
Elon Musk is gone for now, but it's mostly because special government employees, unless you actually divest yourself, you can't be a full-time employee. So he's limited to like 120, 150 days.
Yep.
So he was always going to leave.
He was always going to leave anyway. So this is part and parcel of the plan where it's called the rope-a-dope. Mike, explain the rope-a-dope for everybody from Muhammad Ali.
Well, Muhammad Ali, the greatest fighter in the history of pugilism, he would be and he'd get you over here watching.
He'd get in the ropes.
Wow.
He'd get in the ropes and he'd act like he was getting beat up.
Yep.
And he'd act like he was getting beat up.
Right.
And all of a sudden, geek,
boom.
And it would be over. It's called
right out of his corner.
Called the rope-a-dope.
Yep.
And
I'm just waiting. Mike, wow, the big old howdy to you guy comes out with pugilism.
I am still not over that.
That's a great word.
Well, I tell you what, I walked into the gerbil fence about 90 seconds ago, so now I've got to be careful with what I'm saying.
I mean, that was like running right at you. So let's talk about this today, Howie, because I want to talk about Berkshire Hathaway, their annual meeting. A lot of earnings calls going on right now. It's earnings season in the market. I want to talk about that when we come back. But before we do that, a big howdy to you to the DTT over there.
Yeah.
Hey now. Had a great concert over at Beach Life Festival up in Redondo Beach.
People were singing along. I heard the lyrics to your songs.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It was an interesting stage that we were on. It was right next to the biggest merch booth there was, and kind of you guys know like you're at the state fair where all the people are kind of gathering in a common area.
Yeah.
We had a built-in crowd there.
Oh, that's cool.
Awesome. Made us look very odd.
Big Biz Show rolls on live from the Loft 100 studios in Southern California. That's the Day Trader Trio, best in the world, self-taught, no lessons. Back here at the bar, it's Costa, Marybert Godwin, our executive producers, Greg Todorov, and of course, Sully.
Here we go. Back to Howie Font, New York. But so the last time Donald Trump was president, he did the same thing with tariffs, although it was very, very short-lived. It was only a few weeks. He's playing possum a little bit longer, but you need to understand, I believe, this man's ego is not going to let his legacy be the guy who ruined the economy, the guy who ruined the stock market. He's not going to let that happen. It's not because he has this innate feeling that he wants to do right. I think he just doesn't want it to look bad. But this is how he plays. He always does the opposite first. He always does something that goes against the grain first. And even with the pause he took a couple weeks ago, Howie, which kind of showed that that he's not only playing chicken, he's doing it well. So this next phase here, you really need to bank on the old adage, buy on the rumor, sell on the news, right? Because there's an awful lot going on, swirling on around it. Talk about that for a minute.
I think that's really important. I mean, you can have your own opinion. We can disagree or not on any given issue. We can say tariffs good, tariffs bad, but how are you going to play it? How is it going to impact you as a trader, as an investor? And I think everyone needs to back off and remember they're not in charge of the levers of the macroeconomy. Trade around it if you have capital to. Know where the market's going, and you can't get mad at this stuff. So I think there's a lot of emotion when people take their sides and they want like one outcome to be right or wrong. But no, I mean this showed. If you had simply held through the last month and just whistled past all the volatility, you would have been fine for now. We'll see what happens in the long run, but I think it's really important.
A lot of sellers locked in their losses, Howie. I mean, a lot of sellers locked in their losses when they panicked, and you have to keep your money at risk.
That's what you cannot do.
Real quick, I know Mike has a comment, but I want to say one thing. Here's the next thing that comes out with tariffs, I promise you this will be the next. If the tariff talk continues to heat up, it's a perfect stepping off point for Donald Trump to abolish the IRS and start with a different tax system. Because what you're basically doing is you've created somewhat an ad hoc value-added tax here in the U.S. by doing what he's doing. And it's a great way to step off into discussions about abolishing the IRS, which is what he's talked about in the past. So one of two things is going to happen here. He's going to play chicken all the way to the end, or when he gets heated up, he's going to talk about, well, maybe we need a new tax system. You hear him say, well, maybe it's time for a new income tax system. And watch what happens.
He does like to throw out these, these crazy pitches.
But it's predictable, and I just see us all as fish in a barrel.
It's not going to happen, but yeah.
Howie, the new Prime Minister of Canada, what is it, Guy-Luc Pierre, whatever his name is visiting with Trump today at the White House. What do you expect the outcome of this meeting is going to be between the two countries as far as our little battle with our hat and tariffs, et cetera?
Yeah, I think it's going to mostly end with, some handshaking and some sorries and nice to see a very polite conversation. No, I mean, I think that Carney has gotten a lot of points on the international stage for being tough on Trump, and he's happy to partner with the Europeans. So, there could be some minor, Zelensky-esque fireworks there. But in the end, the Canada-U.S. relationship is way too important. Carney's a globalist, as he kind of freely admits. He knows this. He knows how much Canada relies on the U.S. So there's nothing huge or existential going to happen. And I think in the end, we probably net have the same agreement with Canada in the end. I think it's just important for President Trump to go out on all fronts with the tariff stuff so he looks like he's serious. Because if he wasn't going after Mexico and Canada, then it would kind of all be around the edges, since those are some of our largest trading partners. The
earnings season happening. There was 40,000 people, a stadium full of people in the Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting. What is Berkshire Hathaway going per share right now, Howie? What's the $235,000 a share? Or something?
It is $773,000 a share right now.
Yeah, per share.
Too soon.
So they've never done a stock split. They don't do dividends. Berkshire Hathaway, basically, they went public in 1965. They repurchased shares, and they just let the stock price show, how far they've come along. In fact, I think it's telling. If you put $100 in the S&P 500 and $100 in Berkshire Hathaway, when they went public, how much do you think you'd have? For the S&P 500, you'd have $34,000. For Berkshire Hathaway, you would have an astounding $5.5 million.
What is it? $738,000 per share. What is it right now?
$773,000.
How many shares is
Buffett on? $1.1 trillion. You can do the math.
He's worth $1.1 trillion.
Does his retirement announcement affect it at all, or is he just at this point now just kind of like a figurehead for the
No, he's very active. I mean, the board has said that he's going to stay on as chairman. He announced he's retiring. I thought it was important for the show to cover such a Goliath of the business, the best investor ever by metrics. So he shocked his board. He announced at the end of their 4-hour-long Q&A session that he was going to step down at the end of the year. The board has approved that. He's going to stay as chairman, and he's mostly doing that to give the board confidence because they will deploy, $100 billion at a time if he's around, and maybe they would ask more questions if Greg Yabel, the new CEO, were to do that by himself. But yeah, they take in profit, not revenue, profit, $40 billion a year. They add that to their cash pile. They're sitting on $348 billion of cash and own 5% of all of the U.S. debt.
What's interesting? What's interesting about how this wealth is managed. When you're a Bill Gates or a Warren Buffett, and you have that kind of wealth, you really only sell stock one time, and you do it at right during the IPO. You liquidate a little bit of stock because the rest of your holdings they hypothecate, they borrow against. Now, what happens when you borrow? Is there any interest, or is there any taxes on money that you borrow?
No, sir.
No taxes whatsoever money that you borrow.
Right.
So you borrow against your holdings.
Oh.
You pay an interest rate. It's called margin, and they live the rest of their lives based upon a very small fraction of what they borrow on their whole holdings. Okay. Could you imagine borrowing when you're worth $300 million and you borrow $3 million a year? Okay, that's nothing. And you're paying the interest payment on that you have to do. You do have to pay an interest payment.
Sure.
It's called a hypothecation, and that's how wealthy individuals avoid taxes because they're borrowing against their wealth because of the margin. The risk side to that is if everything crashes at one time and goes down to zero, but it's never happened to zero. Hey, talk about real quickly this gold tax thing, Howie, that I know we were going to talk about tomorrow, but I want to talk about. So short-term capital gains means that if you buy a stock and go, let's say what we call in the business round trip, let's say you buy and sell the same day, okay, and then buy it back again because you're day trading, okay. You have what's called a short-term capital gain if you make money. If you're a buy and holder, I believe it's over a year. I think it's still 12 months, right, Howard?
Yep, that's the principle.
If you buy and hold an investment, okay, and then sell it later on, you have a long-term capital gain or loss, okay? Mm-hmm. You can write short-term losses against short-term losses. So let's say that the amount of money you can write off on an investment loss is $3,000. So if you put $100,000 into a stock and you lose it all, you can only write off $3,000 unless you have a gain elsewhere of the same type. So if it's a short-term loss against a short-term gain, they equal themselves out.
Okay.
Long-term equals themselves. So if you made 100 over here, lost 100 over here, it's a zero tax benefit. Gotcha. Howie, talk about the gold part of this thing.
Yeah, so I found this really interesting. The IRS updated a ruling. This has been in place, but they wanted everyone to know about it because gold has been on such a run. In the last 12 months, it's up 36%, which is pretty insane. So as you said, thank you for explaining. You have these capital gain rates that apply, and people will purposely hold on their investments longer so they get a different tax rate. Makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you want to encourage long-term investing.
Well, it's the same thing you do at the end of the year. Do tax loss selling. You're exactly. Manipulating the tax code just like you have a 72,000 page tax code. You're taking advantage of everything. Sometimes you take losses at the end, so you can take a little bit of reduce your tax burden at the end of the year.
But what I didn't realize, and what I wanted to make sure everyone else does know, is that that tax bracket, that long-term capital gains bracket, is for investments. So that, it doesn't normally come up, but technically things have to be in that investments category. The IRS considers gold to be a collectible and therefore has a different...
Oh my goodness. So if you invest in gold and lose, it's a collectible, it's not an investment?
Yeah, so the tax rate is different. The highest rate for long-term capital gains, like you were just talking about, is 20%. The highest rate for collectibles is 28%. So
What? Oh.
Yes.
So like a Babe Ruth autographed baseball
Oh, look,
collectible?
this just in, Donald Trump refunding the tariffs. Maybe it's time for a new income tax system. Heard it here.
He is our market analyst, Howie Font of the Big Biz Show. Howie, always appreciate it. We appreciate you being along for this ride. Do not go anywhere. Coming right back. We are in the Loft 100 studios. They are the Day Trader Trio. In all seriousness, the best you're ever going to hear. Back here at the bar, we are not. I'm Costa. That's Mary Godwin. Greg Todorov is our executive producer. He is, and that's the guy we call Sully.
That's me. Nice. Wow. Somebody's getting their paycheck this week.
Wow. Yeah. Hitting the post.
What the hell's going on there? Hey, coming up with the program, don't we have Corey Perlman coming up on the show?
Yes.
Is that tomorrow?
That's today.
That's today? Corey Perlman, he's our social media guy. Mary's got a
I get excited.
Mary's got a little crush on Corey.
I
You got a little crush?
that's not accurate, but
You have a little social media, a little
Well, here's the thing. I do.
Yeah,
I mean,
we'll tell
I
you what's
really,
accurate.
I do.
Yeah, we'll tell you what's. Listen, the men are talking. Hold on a second.
Oh, God. I think this is when I.
Go ahead. The floor is yours.
All right, go ahead, Mary. Go ahead.
It's okay.
You like this guy.
I like to geek out over social media stuff because some of these guests I don't know a lot about the subject, but this one I do. I know a lot about social media.
Allan Evans is.
Am I hot flashing?
Is quickly turning into one of my favorite guests. He's the CEO of Unusual Machines. UMAC is the ticker, and we have him back. It's a pretty interesting company, especially considering all of the press that has come out in the last 24 hours regarding him. We'll talk about that. But what's up, brother? Good to talk to you again. And I see that you're stuck cozily with your fake background again in your lobby. It's really.
It's real.
This is
real.
It's a real lobby. Look at that.
I go authentic here, okay?
The reason I gave him
there's
crap
an
on-
honesty to digital.
There's
You can see the reflection of the light I'm using to light myself up, all right? It's real.
By the way, first of all, he is completely. His name isn't Allan Evans. It's AI Evans is his actual initials. He's a real guy, and he's a lot of good stuff. Listen, real quickly before we get to your news, for the people that missed you last time, and we're going to be covering a lot of this company moving forward. But I want you to talk about exactly what you guys do. Unusual Machines is an unusual name for a company, but UMAC is a very criteria-specific business. And when you start talking about Pentagon-certified drones, you start talking about mandated mechanics, and you guys walk in the door and usurp what is normally a Chinese-owned sort of a distribution chain. That's kind of an exciting thing that you guys are doing. Talk about it.
Yeah, we do drone parts. I mean, really. And if you look over the last 5-10 years, all the really good drone parts for backpack-sized drones came out of China. So in the last year and a half, we've been trying to onshore production, and we're really now trying to do motors and flight controllers and cameras, all sort of the value segment for consumers who like to build their own stuff, and also for the government companies that are trying to put together the one-way drones. Sort of that's where we fit. It's pretty simple.
Real quickly, just to let you know, so you had press release out today, so we have an earnings call coming up Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. And then you also are pricing the next round of capital. You guys have a pretty good runway already, but now you're doing another $40 million, if I'm not mistaken, 40, something like that. Let's talk about that a bit.
Yep. Yeah, so a lot of people always ask, hey, what are you going to use the money for? The answer is a little bit for CapEx, like a couple $1 million to build out a motor factory. Otherwise, we're putting it in the bank. And most people, they're like, what? You're just getting it to put it in the bank? When you're a supplier and somebody like Northrop Grumman wants to buy parts for a program for the government, They don't want the person they're buying parts from to go out of business.
Yeah.
So huge credit rating improvement. And then when we go to our supply chain and say, hey, we're going to go build motors. Well, now we have the capital to get payment terms and everything else and move way more to the front of the line and be taken seriously. So we have pretty low burn. We've been under $1 million a quarter for every quarter we've been around. We have money in the bank. We don't have any debt. So it's not to fix any of that. It's literally to put it in the bank so the big boys want to play with us.
Well, there's a teachable moment here. I mean, there was 38,000 people at the Berkshire Hathaway investment conference to talk about the people that pride themselves on money in the bank and for no other reason. The other piece of this thing, which is interesting here, is capital expenditures are one thing, but when the biggest problem with young companies typically is when they hit let's outside of manufacturing, let's talk about retail, for example. Let's say you're making board shorts or you're making t-shirts. The minute you hit $10 million in sales is your biggest, worst nightmare. I'll tell you why. Because rarely does a company have the cash to able to take on the orders it's going to take for those $10 million, which is why the money in the bank. I can only imagine if Northrop Grumman comes in, they're not placing a $10,000 order. They're placing a $10 million order. Unless you've got 3 times that in the bank, you don't even have the money to manufacture what they're asking for. And they're not, they're not going to finance you. There's no 50% down, right. 10%. I mean, the aging report's looking more like 6 months on something like that. So this is one of the biggest pieces because you say money in the bank, but it really is it's smart selling because now you have opened yourself up for the behemoths. Am I correct in saying that?
Exactly, and you have it right. You can go in and you can negotiate some stuff, but I'm not going to negotiate payment terms with Lockheed. I'm going to say, awesome, thanks for the order.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
right.
Why add friction? Why add friction when you just hit the lottery, right? I mean, in terms of that.
Allan Evans is the CEO, Unusual Machines, their ticker symbol UMAC. Allan, as far as, and this is going to sound like a very, very pedestrian question for you, but when you're talking about manufacturing parts and for drones and stuff, are we talking 10,000 little pieces, or is it just a somewhat set number of things that you're manufacturing?
So what we really try to do, we look a lot like Alienware did back in the day. We really try to limit the SKUs to stuff we believe in.
Okay.
But we probably still carry about 10,000 SKUs total, but we're only trying to really make 200 or 300 of those SKUs, the most popular ones in the US, just so we can make them really well and keep the price competitive and be sure the quality is really high. So, why it could be tens of thousands and there are that many different parts in the drone world, we're really trying to focus on minimizing that number and making them as good and valuable as possible.
Allan, I've got to ask, and I'm geeking out because you have no debt. You got a low cash burn. You've got a 2-year runway plus with another $40 million. You're now with the big boys. The big question is, now that you will be comfortable, let's say in the next 45, 60 days, once the capital formation process is completed, now that you're comfortable going after the big guys, do you guys are you already doing that, or are you just press the pedal to the metal now and you hit everybody in the South Bay area of Los Angeles, or all the aerospace companies, everything else, or is that something you guys are currently doing?
A little bit of both. What I would say, and this is part of the whole thing, is we're just starting to see leaks in the government money dam. So, we have a continuing resolution. There was DOGE, so the sort of defense spending and everything else gets real jammed up. It happens all the time, and it opens up at the end of the government fiscal year. And it's just starting to trickle out, very recently. And so it's a little bit in front of it with some of the partners that are anticipating it as well and just being ready.
The next step for you is to we got to get you to San Diego.
Yep.
Because mainly we want to see you, but also I want one of those damn hats that says Unusual.
Well, I'll have to do it tomorrow. These are great hats.
Yeah, it really is.
He is Allan Evans, the CEO, Unusual Machines. Their ticker symbol is UMAC. Allan, always appreciate the visit. All right, you keep it right here. We have much more time coming as we continue right here on the Big Biz Show. Don't go anywhere.
So what are some of the pitfalls that maybe some businesses might run into when they're looking at distribution?
Yeah, they're constantly underestimating, believe it or not, the ease of it or the importance of it. It's execution. Execution is so very important, but if it's not on shelf, it's not for sale.
Yeah.
Nobody cares about Marion Roberts juice if it's not on shelf.
Right.
So distribution trusts us, and so does retail, and our team is incredible.
Loft 100 Studios, The Big Biz Show, and our affiliates and our hosts are not registered investment advisors or broker-dealers.
Our show hosts make no commitment that the purchase of securities of companies profiled or otherwise mentioned in our programming
are suitable or advisable for any person, or that an investment in such securities will be profitable in general.
Given the nature of the company's profile and the lack of an active trading market for the securities, investing is highly speculative and carries a certain high degree of risk.
We profile selected publicly traded and privately held companies on our program.
Most of these companies that we profile have provided compensation to Loft 100 Studios and its hosts for the profile coverage.
From time to time, we sell shares of the companies profiled in the open market that we receive as compensation for coverage of client companies.
But never sell stocks if we are speaking about interviewing or covering a public company who has paid compensation.
Specific questions on compensation can be obtained by contacting producer@sullyentgroup.com.
Listeners should verify all claims and do their own due diligence before investing in any securities mentioned on this program.
Investing in securities is speculative and carries a high degree of risk.
We encourage our investors to invest carefully and read the investor information available at the websites on the
Securities and Exchange Commission at sec.gov and or the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, FINRA, at www.finra.org.
I like it.
Hey, is that a rescue plane?
Resist. Resist. Can't resist the DTT. That's what you're looking at right now as the Big Biz Show rolls on live from the Loft 100 Studios. Costin Merritt Godwin, our executive producer, is Greg Todorov. Of course, he goes by Captain Finance on these here parts. Sully.
I've never called him that.
You've never called him that? That's because I'm not that. Who's our next guest? Mr. Jason Tardio, the President, Chief Operating Officer, Immunic Therapeutics, their ticker symbol IMUX. Back with us here on the Big Biz Show. Well, because he had to hide out. They were in a quiet period. We were blowing up his phone trying to get him on the air, not realizing he was in a quiet period.
Leave you alone.
Sorry about that, Chase. Like, why is this?
Not a problem at all.
Hey, talk about, let's jump right into it, because you had an important data readout on phase 2 data and had a big press release come out, and talk about what's going on.
Yeah, so we recently reported outcomes of a phase 2 study that we had in progressive forms of multiple sclerosis. The study was called the Caliber trial, and the goal and objective of this respective study was to determine whether or not our lead program, a medicine called vidofludimus calcium, could potentially have benefits in the subsets of multiple sclerosis that are defined by just pure progression. And the reason that this was important is that this is the highest unmet need within the multiple sclerosis disease landscape. There are very few therapies approved to address progressive disease, only one currently approved treatment option for primary progressive multiple sclerosis, and no approved therapies for non-relapsing or non-active secondary progressive MS. So we're excited to share these results.
This is well, for me personally, because both my mother and my daughter both suffer from MS, and there are two different types of MS, and MS presents itself differently in almost every person. But what you have, what you guys have accomplished here, what you're seeming to accomplish here, is earth-shattering in the MS world. I mean, it is like when it's like when suddenly there was a different treatment for solid tumor cancers versus blood cancers in the cancer world. I would say that's the equivalent. This is really, really novel.
Yeah, so the way that I would describe it is that this is the holy grail of drug development in multiple sclerosis. Again, there are 15 to 20 therapeutic options to address the relapsing forms of the disease, which is characterized by inflammatory activity. But as I've mentioned previously, there's a little to nothing to treat the progressive forms of the disease, which is highlighted by specifically neurodegeneration. And so we reported results last week that clearly show that our medicine, vidofludimus calcium, has an impact in this subset of the disease. And specifically, we showed a 20% reduction
relative risk reduction in confirmed disability progression in this total cohort of patients that included both non-active SPMS patients and primary progressive MS patients. But more importantly, in the primary progressive subtype, we showed a very robust 30% relative risk reduction in confirmed disability progression compared to placebo. So again, we're quite excited about these results and believe that we might have a path forward to a phase 3 confirmatory study in specifically in this subtype of the disease.
Jason Tardio, the President and Chief Operating Officer, Immunic Therapeutics, ticker symbol IMUX, visiting with us here today.
Hey, Jason, I have a question. I don't think I realized there were these subsets of MS. So if someone does not originally have the progressive form, can they develop it, or is it you have one or the other?
Yeah, so most patients are initially diagnosed with the relapsing forms of the disease. About 75 to 80% of patients initially get a diagnosis, again, with the relapsing forms of the disease. But eventually those patients over time will progress into these progressive forms. Okay. There is a subtype of the disease, as I just mentioned, called primary progressive multiple sclerosis, in which patients are never diagnosed with a relapsing or inflammatory aspect of the disease, that they're purely diagnosed with a progressive form. And this is marked by just continual and gradual, both physical and cognitive decline. You don't have these relapses or these flare-ups that are associated with the relapsing forms of the disease. And there's probably about 5 to 10% of patients or so that are initially diagnosed with just primary progressive multiple sclerosis.
Jason, I've got to talk about drug differentiation because my daughter has relapsed MS. My mother had progressive MS. My daughter benefits from infusions every 6 months and lives a pretty normal life, frankly. And of course, my mother is not able to use infusions. It's a different sort of a deal. Talk about the differentiator in the different current drugs, and then how you guys overlay in terms of the future, assuming everything goes right with the FDA and studies and so on and so forth.
Yeah, so multiple sclerosis is characterized by both neuroinflammation and neurodegeneration. So ideally, what you want is a medicine that addresses both of these facets of the disease. The medicine that you mentioned that your daughter is on, and most of the medicines approved today, virtually all of them, only work on the neuroinflammatory aspect of the disease. The beautiful thing about vidofludimus calcium is it is the first dual mechanistic approach to address the full spectrum of the disease. It inhibits an enzyme called DHODH, which provides potent anti-inflammatory benefits. It also is an activator of a nuclear receptor called NER1, which provides neuroprotective benefits. And so that's, I think, the first clear difference between our medicine and other medicines that might be available today. There's also the convenience of our medicine that it's taken as an oral tablet just once a day. So
not a 6-hour infusion.
Yeah, it's certainly a little bit more convenient for patients because they can just simply take the medicine in the convenience of their home. I think another differentiator of our medicine is that it's been to date, the data that we have seen show that the medicine is very safe and very well tolerated. And again, multiple sclerosis is a chronic disease, and so patients and individuals living with the disease need to take these medicines from diagnosis for the remainder of their life. So safety is a big consideration. Tolerability is a big consideration because we certainly don't want patients feeling worse than the disease themselves. And many medicines, unfortunately, make those patients feel worse. And so we're very excited about the totality of the data that we've seen to date with vidofludimus calcium, and believe that the total value proposition could certainly be a medicine that might be worthwhile for many patients.
Hey, Jason, if we talk about what you're focusing on for the rest of the year, is it capital for future studies? Is it runway in terms of partnerships? What are we thinking about over the next? We got 8 months left in the year, and then we got another 18 months before we're going to see another big FDA hit. What are we thinking here for the next little while?
Yeah, so I think from an operational perspective, it's we're hoping to finalize enrollment and recruitment for the ongoing phase 3 program in relapsing multiple sclerosis. Again, we've guided towards readout and completion of those studies in the second half of next year. Look, from a fundraising perspective, yes, clearly we're always looking for ways to increase capital, and we're in conversations with an existing group of PIPE investors. We did a PIPE investment led by BVF and some other big funds about a year and a half ago. The second tranche of that, or $80 million, will be triggered upon public dissemination of the data that we just released last week. And so we're in negotiation with those investors to hopefully pull that through.
Sure.
And then, of course, partnership discussions remain intact. I mean, there's, as you can imagine, to have an oral medicine that could work both in relapsing multiple sclerosis and progressive MS is something that all major pharma companies would have an interest in. So we're having advanced discussions from that perspective as well.
By the way, a PIPE investment means private investment into a public enterprise or public entity, which means that typically in the life of a public company, there's only two times that public companies actually get the money: an IPO or a secondary offering, or otherwise known as a PIPE. But it's not. It's actually a private, not a public sort of thing. So it's interesting you guys are going through. In fact, we'll do an infotainment sort of thing here in the weeks to come to talk about that as that comes to fruition for you. Jason, thank you so much.
Jason Tardio, the President Chief Operating Officer, Immunic Therapeutics, IMUX, came up from underground, saw the sun, got some fresh air, and jumped on the show with us. Jason, thank you. All right, keep it right here, wherever you are. Lots more to come with the Big Biz. Rolls on live from the Loft 100 studios. Thanks for being along for the ride. That is the Day Trader Trio. Back here at the bar, Mike Costa, otherwise known as Costa, Reverend Godwin, and of course, Sully.
Have you guys been to a movie lately?
Nope.
Have you been to a movie at all?
No.
I went to go see a movie, and then I turned around and realized I got everything at home.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do.
I love going to the movies. I love it.
You've got one of the most ginormous TVs of anybody I know.
Oh, that's true. You do have a big TV.
I also have one right here.
We should have movie nights.
Two.
We should have movie nights here in the studio.
That would be awesome.
Movie? Oh, you mean like sell tickets?
Yeah.
Pretty sure that's a felony. If I'm not sure. If I'm not mistaken.
I can make the.
That they have the little FBI sticker on the front of all the videos. Pretty sure it says, "This is not a victimless crime." No. Pretty sure I've seen that before. In fact, that's the only time I've ever heard "this is not a victimless crime" is when people try to replay movies and charge for a fee.
Without a doubt, the disclaimer.
I wonder if we're allowed to, what if I want to play Godfather? Like, have Godfather?
You could.
I don't know if you could.
I don't think we
don't think you could.
We could. Yeah.
Dang it.
Show bizumentaries that Devin makes.
That you rent a bunch of big, easy chairs.
Well, the reason I'm asking this is because our song, "Oh California," now is up to 7 million freaking views and hits on streams on
Spotify.
on Instagram,
front door.
on Instacart. So I keep on going. Nobody's responding to my posts on Instacart. I don't understand why.
Wow.
Keep on putting pictures up there. I keep on getting warnings from the company.
We do not have this brand of chips, Mr. Sullivan. Wow. I'm sorry.
But the reason, what I want to know is that, so we wrote a song called "California," and it was a very popular song last year. And the National Parks, California State Park System started using the song in their Instagram story, which is great. What I want to know is there any scooch?
I think what's happening is they're using the audio that's being pulled from Spotify. So you should be getting paid for those streams via Spotify, which is, not very much money. But isn't that how that works?
I think so. Yeah, I think you might make enough to buy, a cup of coffee at Starbucks, but I don't know.
I think we should be famous by now.
But is it lost? Am I missing something here? That is your proprietary material that you came up with, that wrote it, blah blah blah, and Smokey the Bear is just going, I think we'll use this here over on Yosemite.
How do I find out who's using our music on Spotify? Is there a way to go on Spotify?
On Spotify?
No, I mean on Instagram.
No, on Instagram. Go to the song and then click on the top, and you'll be able to say use audio, right? And then you save the audio, and then you see how many people have used your audio through that page. Are we doing it live right now?
I was going to do it live, but it's not going to be very interesting on TV.
Well, you can do some research on that and get back to us.
I just want to find out, see if we're.
It's a feather in your cap that you guys have gone viral. That's
Street
pretty
cred.
cool.
That's true.
Street cred.
Is there anything to going viral like it was 3 years ago? Let's say you see, because there's oftentimes even I forget the boxer's name, the boxer
Logan Paul.
Yeah, Logan Paul, who is an internet sensation for doing pranks, turned into a boxer, and it made legitimate millions and millions of dollars. Because is that business still in business? Because I'm looking at young people Even at the Beast Life Festival that we played at on Friday, and you see people staging their selfies with, and they've got these little attachments on their phones, and they're doing it 2 and 3 times. For me, I'm lucky if I'm not taking a picture with the phone in my back pocket. There's a hole in my pants.
They're making a lot of money.
It's like, say, what is that?
This is real denim.
I think they're still making a lot of money. Is that right, Corey? These influencers are making a ton of money because they're doing it for brands.
I do think they're making a lot of money, but he brings up a good point that's been bothering me recently, which I feel like there's a lot of these setups now where you're watching something that you think is organic, and then you realize that they've made it up, and it's completely defeating the point of what we were hoping to see, which is an organic viral video.
Well, Corey, and as we talked about last time, it's when they bring you through this long storytelling process where they lead you to an end and there's never no end, but they want to keep you. And we talked about time spent listening and times, TSA and TSL for television and radio. It's the same thing. I think they want to, the longer you watch, didn't you say, Mary, the longer that they observe something online, the more they get credit for it, get paid. I think there needs to be some sort of an oversight by some of these social companies so that we're not just wasting our time on inaccurate or inauthentic sort of content.
I completely agree with you. I recently was watching a video where it was doesn't matter your political views, but it was a man with a MAGA hat on, and it was a whole situation on a plane, and somebody across the way was recording, and he ends up getting bumped to first class versus the other. Totally made up. I've seen that story before many years ago. Yep. Completely fabricated. I couldn't believe. I felt so dirty. Yeah, terrible.
I remember many years back there was something called clickbait where people, I think we actually talked about this too, where it was like someone would use a thumbnail for something else, and when you clicked on the link to go to that article.
Is that what clickbait is?
Yes.
When I hear the word clickbait, that's what that is?
Facebook would put an end to that because you couldn't upload your own photo. It populated for you. So there were systems in place to avoid that. So now, are there systems going to be in place, hopefully, to avoid this kind of false posting or false content?
Inauthentic content.
Yeah.
I certainly hope so, because this is something I'm starting to see more and more, and I think we can sniff it out. You're like watching it, and you just feel like you've been duped, and you've wasted your time, and it's taken everything out of the authenticity of a viral video. So it's very interesting to see what happens and how they figure it out.
Corey Perlman, social media keynote speaker, owner of Impact Social Media Incorporated. Corey, I was on YouTube the other night, and the screenshot or the thumbnail of what the video I thought I was going to post on was a SeaWorld trainer getting eaten by an orca. And but then, this AI picture of her hand in the orca's mouth, like waving goodbye, kind of tipped me off that maybe it was going to be fake. Where is AI entering into this as far as like Instagram and X and Facebook and stuff like that? You talk about fabricated stories. Yeah. What is AI going to do to it?
It's making it worse. I've seen exactly what you're talking about. I've been a part of watching hoping to see the end of the story, only to see that it was fabricated by AI. So that's only going to, accelerate this issue. And the social media sites are going to have to be tasked with figuring out what's real and what's not.
Do you anticipate there being another wave of social use? Mike and I were even talking about the Line app the other day. They were forced down our throat when we were doing radio, and then that turned into WhatsApp. Is there another iteration, you think?
Every time one pops up, Sully, it tends to lose steam. The last one was Blue Sky, which we have talked about in the weeks past, and I have not seen it be able to, create waves that we thought it was going to. So as many problems as the big three, if you will, big four maybe with TikTok they still seem to be impenetrable from other outside new social media sites at this point.
Hey, Corey, real quickly before you get out of here, I want to start doing something with you, and you're on the air with us every week, and that's a takeaway. What's your takeaway this week you're talking to most of your clients about? What is there one sort of theme that's happening this week for you so far?
Yeah, it's different forms of video time frames. People ask long versus short. Both are good. Short are good for attracting users and virality, which you were talking about earlier, and longer is for key content and getting your point across.
All right, very good.
Corey Perlman, social media keynote speaker, owner of Impact Social Media Incorporated, one of our favorite guests. We say goodbye to him. And we also say goodbye to you, lovely people, watching the Big Biz Show. We will see you next time.